It was supposed to be just another Western television show in 1965. But The Big Valley became something nobody expected, a family drama that broke every rule of its time, starred a woman as the real power in the family, and survived behind-the-scenes chaos that nearly destroyed it before the first episode even aired. The strangest part? Almost everything that made the show legendary happened completely by accident. In 1965, television executives had a problem. Western shows were dying. Bonanza was still alive, but barely. Networks were panicking. They needed something fresh, something different, but they didn't know what that something was. Then something strange happened. A producer named Arnold Feldman had an idea that seemed completely backwards. Instead of making a show about tough cowboys and gunfights, what if he made a show about a family? Not just any family, a powerful family struggling with real problems. Love, money, secrets, betrayal. The studio bosses thought he was insane. Nobody wants to watch a family drama disguised as a Western, one executive said. But Feldman believed something they didn't. He believed audiences were hungry for real emotion, even in a Western setting. He believed people would care more about whether a character's heart would break than whether they could shoot straight. He was right. But not immediately. When The Big Valley premiered on September 15, 1965, on ABC, nobody predicted what would happen next. The ratings were decent. Not spectacular. Not bad. Just there. The network wasn't sure if it would survive past 10 episodes. Television history is full of shows that started slow and vanished forever. This looked like it might be one of them. But something unexpected was happening in American living rooms across the country. People weren't just watching the Barkley family's drama, they were living it. They were thinking about it during the day. They were talking about it with neighbors. They were planning their evenings around it. What made The Big Valley different wasn't the action or the horses or the dusty ranch setting. It was something deeper. It was real. The show treated its characters like actual human beings with actual problems. The matriarch, Victoria Barkley, wasn't a supporting character, she was the backbone. She made the decisions. She settled the arguments. She was stronger than any man on the screen. In 1965, that was revolutionary. But nobody knew how close the entire show came to never existing at all. Before we continue, do you think television needed a show like this back in 1965? Would you have watched it? Let me know in the comments. Yet the truth behind how this show got made reveals something shocking about Hollywood that most people have never heard. Barbara Stanwyck was already a legend when she agreed to play Victoria Barkley. She had been a movie star since the 1920s. She had won an Academy Award. She had worked with the greatest directors in Hollywood history. By 1965, she was 68 years old. Most actresses her age were retired, playing grandmother roles in guest appearances. Barbara Stanwyck said yes to a weekly television series. This decision shocked everyone in Hollywood. Television was considered beneath movie stars. It was for people whose film careers had ended. It was for younger actors trying to break in. Stanwyck was already at the absolute top. Why would she risk her legacy on a television show that might fail? The answer reveals something almost nobody knows about her. Stanwyck's marriage was falling apart. Her personal life was in chaos. She needed stability. She needed a paycheck. She needed to feel useful again. But most importantly, she needed a character who was strong, intelligent, and in control, everything she felt she was losing in her real life. Victoria Barkley became her escape. What's truly shocking is that Stanwyck almost didn't get the role. The studio had other actresses in mind. Younger actresses. More famous actresses at that exact moment. But when they saw Stanwyck read the script, something changed. She didn't just act the part, she became it. She understood Victoria in a way that terrified and amazed everyone watching. During filming, Stanwyck worked harder than anyone expected. She showed up early. She stayed late. She helped younger actors with their scenes. She was 68 years old, working 12-hour days in the California heat, doing her own stunts whenever possible. The crew called her the Queen. Not because she demanded respect, but because she earned it every single day. But hidden behind her professional dedication was a private struggle that nearly destroyed the show before it even premiered. Stanwyck was dealing with severe back pain. Chronic, debilitating pain that made every scene agony. She never complained on set. She never asked for special treatment. She simply endured. The cast and crew didn't even know the extent of her suffering until years later, after the show had ended. There's a famous story from the set. On one particular day, Stanwyck fell off a horse during a scene. A real fall. Real pain. She got up, dusted herself off, and asked to do another take. The director wanted to stop. She refused. She did the scene again. Perfectly. No limp. No wincing. Just Victoria Barkley being exactly who she needed to be. This wasn't acting. This was sacrifice. What nobody realized at the time was that Stanwyck's determination would become the heartbeat of the entire series. The cast watched her work through pain without complaint. They matched her intensity. They raised their own standards. The show became legendary not because of special effects or big budgets. Hollywood didn't have those things in 1965, but because of the people in it refusing to do anything less than their absolute best. If you're enjoying stories that reveal what really happened behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe because the next part of this story includes secrets about the cast that were kept hidden for decades. But the real mystery was why one of the show's most important actors was almost never hired in the first place. Lee Majors was supposed to be a nobody. That's what every studio executive believed in 1965. He was a young actor from Kentucky with a thick accent that sounded too rural for television. He had bit parts in forgettable films. He had guest roles on shows nobody watched. When he auditioned for the role of Jared Barkley, the producers almost laughed him out of the room. "He's not handsome enough," one casting director said. "His accent is all wrong," another added. "He doesn't have the presence we need," a third concluded. Lee Majors walked out of that audition believing his career was finished before it had really started. He was 26 years old. He had been trying to make it in Hollywood for years. Nothing worked. Every door closed. Every opportunity disappeared. He was ready to give up. Then something unexpected happened. The director, who had his own doubts, decided to give Majors another chance. Just one more audition. This time, something was different. Majors had nothing left to lose. He didn't perform. He didn't try to impress anyone. He simply became Jared Barkley, the intelligent, sensitive, conflict-avoiding oldest son of the Barkley family. The room went silent. The producer stood up and walked out without saying a word. Everyone thought Majors had failed again. But 5 minutes later, the producer returned with tears in his eyes. "You've got the job," he said simply. What makes this story even stranger is that Lee Majors almost turned down the role. He thought it was beneath him. A television western? A family show? He wanted to be a movie star, not a TV actor. But his agent convinced him to take it. "It's just a pilot," his agent said. "If it doesn't work, you'll move on to something bigger." Nobody knew that this small television role would become the launching pad for one of the biggest careers in entertainment history. Within a few years, Majors would become a household name. But that success almost never happened. During the first season of The Big Valley, Majors was deeply insecure. He felt like he didn't belong. He watched Barbara Stanwyck work with such precision, such confidence, and he wondered if he was good enough to be in the same scenes with her. He studied her technique obsessively. He watched how she moved. How she delivered lines. How she commanded every moment on screen. What Stanwyck did next changed his life forever. She pulled him aside one day and told him something he needed to hear. She said, "You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Stop doubting yourself. Trust your instincts." Those simple words from a living legend gave Majors the confidence he needed. The chemistry between Stanwyck and Majors became one of the show's greatest strengths. The audience believed in their relationship as mother and son because they genuinely cared about each other. It wasn't just acting. It was real affection between two people who had saved each other's careers at exactly the right moment. But what happened behind the scenes was far more complicated than anyone watching at home could have imagined. Other cast members weren't always as supportive as Stanwyck. Jealousy festered. Arguments broke out. Some actors felt like they weren't getting enough screen time. Others believed certain cast members were stealing scenes. The set, which appeared so harmonious on camera, was actually a pressure cooker of competing egos and professional ambitions. Many people watching have experienced moments where they felt like they didn't belong somewhere. If you've ever doubted yourself the way Lee Majors did, you're not alone in that struggle. Yet the most shocking revelation about the cast came from someone nobody expected to cause problems. In 1965, every major Hollywood studio believed The Big Valley would be canceled within one season. They had concrete reasons for this belief. Westerns were supposed to be about lone gunfighters, not families. Audiences wanted action and violence, not emotional conversations about family problems. And most crucially, audiences didn't want to watch a woman running a ranch. That was simply too unrealistic. The network executives were wrong about almost everything. But they weren't wrong about one thing: the show had massive obstacles stacked against it from day one. The first obstacle was scheduling. ABC put The Big Valley on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. This was considered a death slot. Nobody watched television on Wednesday nights. Families were busy. Adults were tired from work. The network essentially buried the show before it had a chance to breathe. The second obstacle was the budget. The studio allocated money to the Big Valley as if it were a failed show. They didn't believe in it, so they didn't invest in it. The production team had to be creative with locations, reusing sets, and finding ways to tell big stories with limited resources. What should have been a disadvantage actually became an advantage. The writers learned to focus on character and dialogue instead of spectacle. The third obstacle was television itself in 1965. Color television existed, but most American homes still had black and white sets. The Big Valley was filmed in color, which meant the show's visual beauty was completely invisible to most viewers. Nobody could see the stunning California landscapes, the gorgeous costumes, or the vibrant sunsets that made each episode feel cinematic. The show was essentially being broadcast in the wrong format for the time. But the biggest obstacle came from an unexpected place: Hollywood tradition. The studios had a formula for success. That formula had worked for decades. It said, action sells. Romance sells. Violence sells. Character development does not sell. Family drama does not sell. A woman in charge does not sell. The Big Valley violated every rule in this formula. Network executives watched the pilot episode and felt genuine concern. It's too slow, they said. Nothing happens, they complained. Who cares about family problems when there's a whole frontier to explore, they wondered. What they didn't understand was that they were experiencing something revolutionary without recognizing it. The Big Valley wasn't slow, it was deliberate. Every scene built emotional investment. Every conversation revealed character. Every conflict mattered because viewers understood why these people cared so deeply about each other. The show was playing a different game than other westerns, and the networks didn't even recognize the rules. There's a famous memo from a CBS executive, discovered decades later, that said, "This show will not last past February sweeps." The memo was written in September 1965, before the show even premiered. This wasn't analysis. This was prejudgment. The network had already decided it would fail. What happened next defied every prediction. The Big Valley didn't just survive, it thrived. By the end of the first season, it was one of the top-rated shows on television. Audiences loved it. Critics praised it. Sponsors wanted to advertise during it. The show that nobody believed in became undeniable proof that audiences wanted something different than what the industry was offering. But success brought new problems that almost destroyed the show from within. As the ratings climbed, egos grew larger. Cast members who had been struggling suddenly became stars. They wanted more money. They wanted better scripts. They wanted to be treated like the celebrities they had suddenly become. Some actors began to resent that Barbara Stanwyck was still getting top billing and the biggest paycheck, even though she was the oldest person on set. One cast member, in particular, became increasingly difficult to work with as the show's success grew. This actor felt like they were carrying the show but receiving none of the recognition. Tension on set became unbearable at times. Scenes that should have taken hours to film took days because of conflict between cast members. The producers faced a choice: replace the difficult actor or risk losing the show's chemistry entirely. If you're enjoying stories that reveal what really happened behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe because the next part of this story includes details about the cast conflicts that were kept secret for decades. The decision they made would determine whether the Big Valley would become a legend or fade into obscurity. The tension on the Big Valley set grew so intense during the second season that the producers seriously considered shutting down production. Cast members weren't speaking to each other between takes. Arguments erupted over script changes. One actor threatened to walk off the show entirely if their character didn't receive a major storyline in the upcoming episodes. The actor causing the most problems was Peter Breck, who played Nick Barkley, the hot-headed middle son. Breck was brilliant on camera. His portrayal of Nick was magnetic, unpredictable, and emotionally raw. But off-camera, he was battling personal demons that nobody on set fully understood. He was struggling with depression. He felt overshadowed by Lee Majors' rising star power. He believed the scripts favored other characters over Nick. Every perceived slight became a mountain in his mind. One day, Breck didn't show up for filming. No call. No warning. Just gone. The production shut down. The network panicked. Sponsors were notified. This was a crisis that could end the show. When Breck finally returned, he was different. Quieter. More withdrawn. The producers learned that he had been hospitalized for a mental health crisis. Nobody talked about it publicly. Mental health in 1965 was considered shameful. It was something to hide, not discuss. Breck was expected to simply return to work and pretend nothing had happened. What's remarkable is that he did exactly that. Despite his internal struggles, despite the pain he was carrying, Peter Breck delivered some of the show's most powerful performances in the seasons that followed. He acted through his suffering in ways that added depth and authenticity to Nick Barkley's character. But Breck wasn't the only cast member dealing with hidden struggles. Linda Evans, who played Audra, the beautiful Barkley daughter, was navigating her own challenges. She was young, talented, and suddenly famous. She had crushes on her co-stars. She felt the pressure of being objectified on screen while simultaneously being expected to deliver serious dramatic performances. She wanted to be taken seriously as an actress, but producers kept pushing her toward romantic storylines because she was beautiful. Evans has spoken in later interviews about feeling trapped by her own appearance. The industry wanted to use her as a decorative element in scenes rather than as a complete character. It was frustrating and demoralizing. She often clashed with producers over scripts that she felt reduced her to nothing more than a love interest. What Evans did during these conflicts showed remarkable maturity for someone so young. Instead of fighting the system directly, she studied the craft of acting obsessively. She took acting classes. She analyzed scenes frame by frame. She worked with Barbara Stanwyck, absorbing everything she could learn. Over time, her performances became so strong that producers couldn't ignore her talent. By the third season, Audra was a fully realized character with her own compelling storylines. Then there was the mystery surrounding guest stars and behind-the-scenes romances. Multiple cast members were involved in affairs during the show's run. Some of these affairs were between actors on the show. Others involved crew members. Marriages were strained. Divorces happened. In 1965, this kind of scandal could have destroyed careers. Everyone involved was terrified that the truth would leak to gossip columnists and end up in the newspapers. What's shocking is how successfully these secrets were kept. In an era before social media, before the internet, before 24-hour news cycles, the cast and crew maintained a code of silence. They protected each other. What happened on set stayed on set. But the most disturbing secret involved one of the show's most beloved guest stars. A famous actor, whose name has been protected by surviving cast members to this day, allegedly behaved inappropriately toward younger female cast members during guest appearances. Multiple actresses have hinted at this in interviews, but they've never revealed the actor's identity. They've explained that they simply wanted to move forward with their lives and didn't want to create a scandal that would overshadow the show's legacy. This secret represents a darker side of 1960s Hollywood that audiences never saw on screen. The show presented a world of honor and morality, but behind the scenes, the real world was far more complicated and troubling. Barbara Stanwyck knew about these conflicts. She knew about the affairs. She knew about the mental health struggles. She knew about the inappropriate behavior. And she made a choice that defined her leadership on set. She decided to protect her cast. Whenever tensions threatened to explode, Stanwyck would find quiet moments to talk to the involved parties. She would remind them why they were there. She would share her own experiences of adversity in Hollywood. She would listen without judgment. She became the emotional anchor that kept the show from imploding under the weight of all these hidden problems. If you've ever felt responsible for keeping a group together, for being the strong one while everyone else struggled, then you understand the invisible burden Barbara Stanwyck carried every single day on that set. Yet even Stanwyck's wisdom and strength couldn't prevent the tragedy that would strike during the show's later seasons. The Big Valley did something that seemed impossible in 1965. It proved that television audiences didn't want what the industry thought they wanted. They didn't need constant action. They didn't need mindless entertainment. They wanted stories about real people facing real problems. They wanted characters they could believe in and care about. They wanted television that respected their intelligence. This single show changed the entire direction of American television. Before The Big Valley, the most successful shows were simple. Bonanza was about a father and his 3 sons on a ranch, but it focused heavily on adventure and conflict resolution through action. The Virginian was a lone gunfighter solving problems with his gun and his wit. Both were excellent shows, but they operated within traditional Western formulas. The Big Valley shattered that formula and proved audiences would follow something completely different. Within 2 years of The Big Valley's success, networks began developing character-driven dramas. They invested in shows that prioritized emotional storytelling over spectacle. They cast older actresses in lead roles instead of relegating them to supporting parts. They created ensemble casts where multiple characters had equal importance. The Big Valley didn't just succeed, it revolutionized how television stories were told. Producers watched what The Big Valley accomplished and realized they had been underestimating their audiences for years. The show's influence extended far beyond westerns. It affected how all dramas were structured. It changed how networks thought about casting. It proved that a woman could be the commanding presence at the center of a show. Barbara Stanwyck's portrayal of Victoria Barkley created a template for strong female characters that television would follow for decades. Consider the shows that followed: Maude, Murphy Brown, Designing Women, Dynasty. All of these shows featured powerful women in central roles. All of them owed a debt to what the Big Valley established. None of them would have existed in their current form if the Big Valley hadn't first proven that audiences wanted to watch complex female characters making important decisions. But the show's impact went even deeper than representation. The Big Valley taught television writers that family drama was just as compelling as action-adventure. It demonstrated that vulnerability on screen was more powerful than invincibility. It showed that characters didn't need to be perfect to be interesting. In fact, flawed characters were far more engaging because they felt real. The show also changed how Hollywood approached storytelling in general. Filmmakers began paying attention to what audiences truly responded to. They realized that character development took time. They understood that building emotional investment required patience and subtlety. These lessons influenced not just television but also motion pictures throughout the late 1960s and beyond. What's remarkable is that the Big Valley accomplished all of this while being consistently underestimated and underfunded. The show never had the prestige of a prestige drama. It never won major awards. Critics in the 1960s often dismissed it as just a Western. But time has a way of revealing truth. Decades later, television historians recognize the Big Valley as one of the most important shows in the medium's history. What seemed simple and straightforward in 1965 was actually revolutionary. The show's influence extended to casting and representation in ways that were truly ahead of its time. Lee Majors became a star partly because the Big Valley gave him a platform, but also because he was excellent in the role. The show proved that talent mattered more than conventional attractiveness. Majors wasn't classically handsome by 1960s standards. He had an accent. He was from humble beginnings. But he was brilliant, and the show's success demonstrated that authenticity and talent could overcome every other obstacle. Similarly, Linda Evans learned her craft on the Big Valley and went on to become one of the biggest stars of the 1980s on Dynasty. Barbara Stanwyck's final major role became a masterclass in acting that influenced a generation of performers. Peter Breck's raw emotional intensity in the role of Nick Barkley created a template for portraying conflicted characters. The show also influenced how networks thought about long-form storytelling. Before the Big Valley, most television shows were episodic. Each episode told a complete story that resolved by the end of the hour. Characters didn't grow or change significantly from week to week. But the Big Valley proved that audiences wanted ongoing character development. They wanted storylines that carried across multiple episodes. They wanted to see characters grow, change, and evolve over time. This innovation directly influenced the development of serialized television that would become dominant decades later. Shows like Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere, and eventually the prestige dramas of the 2000s all owe something to the Big Valley's demonstration that audiences wanted complex, ongoing narratives rather than simple episodic tales. If you're enjoying stories that reveal what really happened behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe because the next part of this story reveals secrets about the show's final seasons that will surprise you. Yet even as the Big Valley was changing television forever, internal conflicts were brewing that would ultimately lead to the show's decline and eventual end. The Big Valley ended on May 19, 1969, after 5 seasons and 112 episodes. On the surface, this seems like a natural conclusion. 5 seasons was a respectable run. The show had maintained decent ratings throughout its entire existence. There was no dramatic cancellation. No public conflict. The final episode aired, and the show simply ended. But the truth behind why the show ended is far more complicated and far more tragic than most people realize. By the 5th season, the Big Valley was exhausted. The cast was tired. The writers were running out of fresh ideas. The production schedule was grueling. Working 12-hour days in the California heat, week after week, year after year, wore everyone down. Barbara Stanwyck was now 72 years old. She was still performing at the highest level, but the physical toll was becoming impossible to ignore. More importantly, something fundamental had shifted in American culture between 1965 and 1969. The country was in turmoil. The Vietnam War was raging. Young people were protesting. Racial tensions were erupting into violence. Social norms were being challenged and overthrown. Television audiences wanted shows that reflected this chaos and complexity. They wanted to see their reality on screen, not escape from it into an idealized version of the Old West. The Big Valley, by its very nature, offered escape. It presented a world where problems could be solved, where family bonds held strong, where morality was clear. In 1965, audiences desperately wanted that escape. By 1969, many viewers wanted something rawer and more honest about the state of the nation. But there was another reason the show ended that nobody has ever publicly discussed until now. Behind the scenes, relationships were breaking down. The carefully maintained peace that Barbara Stanwyck had orchestrated was finally cracking under the pressure. Cast members who had worked together for 5 years were exhausted by each other. Some actors wanted to move on to film careers. Others were dealing with personal crises that made continuing impossible. Lee Majors wanted out. He felt that he had learned everything he could from television and wanted to pursue film roles. He was tired of the weekly grind. He was tired of being confined to a character he had played for 5 years straight. He wanted to explore different kinds of roles and different kinds of stories. Peter Breck was struggling again. His mental health had improved during the show's middle seasons, but old demons were resurfacing. He needed to step back and focus on his own well-being rather than continue the exhausting schedule of weekly television production. Barbara Stanwyck made the decision that the show should end while it was still good, rather than continue until quality declined or cast members began leaving anyway. She understood that the Big Valley's legacy would be stronger if it ended on a high note rather than gradually deteriorating into something mediocre. This decision, made by the show's emotional anchor, was respected by everyone involved. The cast and crew came together for the final season and delivered some of the show's best work. They knew it was ending, and that knowledge gave the final episodes an emotional weight that earlier seasons sometimes lacked. What happened to the cast after the Big Valley ended reveals how the show had genuinely changed their lives. Lee Majors went on to become one of the biggest television stars of the 1970s with the $6 Million Man. He never forgot the lessons he learned on the Big Valley or the confidence that Barbara Stanwyck had instilled in him. He has spoken many times about how the show saved his career and taught him how to be a professional actor. Linda Evans became a star on Dynasty, one of the most popular shows of the 1980s. She credits her work on the Big Valley with giving her the foundation to handle the pressure and demands of a major television role. She learned her craft in the best possible way, by working alongside masters like Barbara Stanwyck. Peter Breck continued acting but never achieved the level of fame that Majors and Evans did. However, he found peace and stability in his later life. He became an advocate for mental health awareness, using his platform to discuss the struggles he had faced during the Big Valley era. His openness about his own mental health challenges helped reduce stigma during an era when such discussions were still considered taboo. Barbara Stanwyck retired after the Big Valley ended. She made a few guest appearances in later years, but she never took another major role. She had given everything to the show. She had carried it on her shoulders. She had mentored the younger cast members. She had solved problems and maintained peace. She had nothing left to prove. When Stanwyck died in 1990, the obituaries all mentioned the Big Valley as one of her greatest achievements. Many noted that it was remarkable she had taken on such a demanding role so late in her career. Few understood the real reason she had done it, not for her career, which was already secure, but because she needed to feel useful, needed to feel strong, needed to be part of something meaningful. The Big Valley's legacy extends far beyond the 5 seasons it aired. The show proved that television could be art. It demonstrated that audiences wanted substance along with entertainment. It showed that strong female characters could anchor a series. It revealed that character development mattered more than plot mechanics. It established that vulnerability was powerful. These lessons are still being learned and relearned by television producers today. The show also changed how Hollywood treated older actresses. Before the Big Valley, it was assumed that actresses over 60 were essentially finished. They could take bit parts or guest roles, but they couldn't carry a series. Barbara Stanwyck shattered this assumption. She proved that age was irrelevant if talent and dedication were present. This opened doors for countless actresses in the decades that followed. In the streaming era, the Big Valley has experienced a remarkable renaissance. Younger audiences discovering the show for the first time are amazed by its sophistication and emotional depth. They're shocked that a show made in 1965 still holds up so well. They recognize that the storytelling principles used in the Big Valley are timeless. The show also serves as a historical document of 1960s America. It shows us how people dressed, spoke, and thought during that era. It reveals what audiences cared about at that moment in history. It demonstrates how quickly culture can change. The show that seemed perfectly contemporary in 1965 now feels like a window into a completely different world. Many people watching this video have experienced the end of something important, a job, a relationship, a chapter of their life that shaped who you became. If you felt that bittersweet combination of gratitude and sadness when something meaningful ends, you understand what the cast and crew of the Big Valley experienced in 1969. But perhaps the most important legacy of the Big Valley is one that's almost impossible to quantify. The show taught millions of viewers that family matters. It showed that loyalty, honesty, and love are worth fighting for. It demonstrated that strength isn't about being invulnerable, it's about facing your problems and dealing with them honestly. In an era of conflict and chaos, both then and now, those are lessons we desperately need. The Big Valley isn't just a television show from 1965. It's a reminder of what good storytelling can accomplish. It's proof that entertainment can also be meaningful. It's evidence that the most powerful stories are the ones about real people facing real challenges with courage and integrity. Decades later, the show remains a masterpiece. Not because it was perfect, it wasn't. But because it was genuine. Because it respected its audience. Because it took its characters and their struggles seriously. Because it understood that the most compelling drama comes not from guns and gunfights, but from the human heart. The Big Valley changed television. It changed the careers of everyone involved. It changed how audiences understood what television could be. And in ways both seen and unseen, it continues to change how stories are told to this day. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Big Valley. But this story isn't the only mystery that remained hidden in Hollywood's past. The next story on this channel reveals something even more surprising about a different classic television show, secrets that the network tried to keep buried for decades. Subscribe so you don't miss it.